r/AskReddit. Cops of Reddit, what's the most bullshit sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? Cop here, got a call of a domestic dispute that sounded very heated and a lot of banging was heard. Get to scene and I can hear someone yelling and swearing and brawling, doesn't sound good at all. Guy answers the door, shirt off and angry, but seems bewildered as to why police had been called. He told me he was building IKEA furniture, sounds like the most bullshit thing. But, we enter, see the new IKEA furniture half set up and no one else is home. Color me surprised. Edit, thanks for the silver and gold. To answer a few people, no, I did not help assemble the furniture. No one should assemble IKEA stuff while armed. Oh man, totally been there before, haha. My partner and I nearly broke up over cheap furniture. I always do it alone for that reason. It's usually easy enough for one person and you can only yell at yourself when you inevitably put something on backwards. During a search of a person, I pulled out a bag of a sticky dark substance consistent with heroin. The subject had multiple drug priors and is a known heavy heroin user. He immediately tells me it is burnt sugar and he is pissed someone sold it to him. Long story short, when I tested the substance it did not test positive for heroin. This explains the guy with the high blood glucose levels when he showed up for court. 2meta2fast. I love this sort of shit. I'm running booking one night, guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of drugs. I'm talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a DEA informant and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Right. Face left please. Guy is like, I'm telling you dude, they're gonna be sue you upper pissed that you country retards fucked up their bust. Whatever, get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later 3 guys show up, DEA agents, they're super pissed that our deputies fucked up their bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out, and he's just like they super pissed huh. Yeah. Told you so. I had a similar call to this one night. I was on patrol, running traffic, and ran a tag through the state's DMV system. Tag comes back immediately with a DHS warning, tone, and everything, alerting that the driver was on the terrorist watch list and advised not to make contact with the driver under any circumstances. I thought maybe I'd run the wrong plate, so I tried it again. Sometimes the tags are hard to read and things show up wrong. The tag returned again as the driver being on the no contact list. I was about to advise dispatch that of the situation when they raised me on the radio, saying someone from DHS had called about me running the plate twice and demanded that I not make contact with the vehicle. Needless to say, I left him alone. But it was crazy spooky how fast they called after I'd run the plate. Serious watchdogs. Former Mayor say here, look it up, it is a Dutch thing, police but also military. We also had jurisdiction over the American soldiers stationed here. One day we got called over to a possible case of domestic violence. We arrive at the house and the guy opened wearing only underwear. He told us he and his wife were role-playing. Of course we didn't trust this and asked to see his wife. After denying us entry we told we would come back with a warrant. He reluctantly agreed to let us enter. So we go in and he opened the basement door and inside was the freakiest sex dungeon. I mean chains, whips, things I couldn't identify hanging on the wall. And in the middle hanging in chains was his butt naked, gagged wife. We asked her but she told everything was okay. Turned out they were really into some kinky stuff. Asked them to keep the screaming part in the basement and to a minimal. We did the whole thing with a straight face, but as soon as we were in the car, furious wanking ensued. An awesome end to the story. A happy ending, one might say. Edit, whoa, I wake up and I have silver? No cops are posting in here anyway, so I'll throw my hat into the ring as a defense attorney. Guy pulled over for impaired driving and charged later with OWI. My boss gets the criminal complaint and the guy shows up for his initial appearance and tells her he hadn't been drinking despite horrifically failing the sobriety test. She's literally sitting next to him and he's obviously wasted again, disappointing but not uncommon for alcoholics. The deputies arrest him for bail jumping because he drove himself to court that day, and while out on bail he's not supposed to drink. He adamantly denies drinking. Blood tests come back. He didn't drink. Dude's diabetic without knowing it and naturally got himself drunk because sometimes when it goes untreated, diabetes can cause symptoms that look just like intoxication. Got him some insulin and the charge is dismissed. Edit, since there are so many people with the same questions. As far as I'm aware, the guy did the field sobriety test and failed. The last part of the test is the breathalyzer, which he refused. Refusal is an automatic failure in and of itself without failing the nystagmus, follow the finger, walk, leg lift, and count. He didn't know he had diabetes. I already stated it in the original comment, but yeah, dude developed diabetes at some point and wasn't aware he had it until the case. OWI in Wisconsin is what DUI is in other parts of the US. Your first OWI is not a criminal offense, it's just a ticket in Wisconsin, so it would have been at least this guy's second drunk driving accusation, but seeing as diabetes wasn't raised as a defense the first time, my assumption is he probably developed it after. I'm an ER nurse. When the cops bring their DUI folks to us for a quick blood draw, I always get a blood glucose too, just in case. I went to a disturbance at a backyard barbecue once. Turns out it was a bunch of Roma, gypsies. As I was trying to figure out what was going on, I had some old lady approach me and want to talk to me off to the side. She told me she was an informant for the FBI and that if I left, she would be able to get some information on a matter the FBI was interested in. I rolled my eyes and thanked her and said I would be out of there as soon as I could make sure there was no violence going on. Anyway, I determined it was just verbal, so I cleared the call and went back in service. About 15 to 30 minutes later, dispatch radioed me to head back to the station. I got there and got a message to call some FBI field office and ask for a certain agent. I called and sure as shit this agent said he understood I spoke with his informant and wanted to know everything she told me. Blew my mind. Crazy quick. How did the FBI in the field office know so quickly? It's the FBI. Shout out to the agent monitoring this thread. Keep up the good work. I was driving with my fiancé and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and shit, and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed, I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too, just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like really. I just started immediately professing, OMG, I swear to God this is catnip, you can take it and smell it or test it or whatever, like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up, and the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth, and he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened, and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. Catweed. Good thing they weren't cat cops. You mean claw enforcement? God damn it, I hate you so much right now. Just kidding, that was good. Mid-July in like 2008? Young kid going 93 in a 55. I swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car, his first words before I can even start speaking, my dog died, he hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home. What.jpg? Anyway, he calls other family members, his aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins come out to the stop, and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash/runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have wrote him, but losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he fucked up and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. I'm glad there are cops out there who understand both how horrible losing a dog is and how financially hard it is to get a ticket as a kid. Insurance is already too high. Of course kids should be more careful and it's not the cops' fault they got pulled over, but you did the right thing in this scenario. Holy shit. Around that time, I watched a dog hang itself. I couldn't save it because it jumped over a yard within a yard dog run, dash, and there was another dog in the bigger yard. I actually called 911 and the firemen came but they couldn't save it. It died a foot away from me. I have never ever cried so hard in my life. I was a teenage girl and I felt so bad about not being able to save the dog. I kept picturing what the family must have felt. Note: I don't think we are talking about the same story because the dog was delivered by firemen, not discovered by family. I'm glad this kid got a break in that tough time. I got pulled over for driving to school at 10 a.m. The cop wanted to know why I was skipping school. I explained that our little town's girls basketball team just won state and since the game was so far away they let us start that day at 10:30 a.m. He followed me all the way to the school so he could ask the principal. I still don't know what was illegal about driving to school at 10 a.m., but he was kind of a douche. Where do you live? North Korea? Hong Kong? Portland? Okay, so I'm going to tell my crazy story as the person on behind the wheel. My uncle was divorcing his terrible wife. He was no saint but definitely on the right side of their divorce. The wife was still on the paperwork to take their 2 kids out of the school even though my uncle had temporary custody while the courts did their thing. She had previously threatened to take them both and just run away, so I don't know why she was still on the paperwork. On picture day that year, she showed up to the school and signed both kids out and disappeared. I was not involved in the crazy process of calling the police and tracking the kids down, but I was pulled from school that day because I had my driver's license and could be an extra pair of hands. They managed to find the kids and they were turned over my grandmother and mom, but my niece was distraught that she would be missing picture day. It was her first time away from her terrible mother and she was finally allowed to be a cheerleader, a dream in her tiny eyes. So, me having my car and nothing else better to do, offered to take her back to the school. My mom got the school to agree to keep the person there a little longer, but it was going to be by the skin of our teeth that we would make it as this was rural. Okay. We got in the car and I blasted down those dirt roads doing approximate 70 in a 35. Not a good decision on my part, but I was an anxiety-ridden 17-year-old dealing with a nasty divorce and kidnapping for the first time in my life. We, of course, get pulled over. I'm freaking out cause I can't afford that bad of ticket and all the crap that was coming in that day. The cop listened to the story, and ignored my barely held in tears, and said he would let us off with a warning because he believed the story. And the only reason he believed the story was that he had just pulled over my uncle going the same speed the opposite direction on the same road and go the same story. Edit, my cousin, not my niece. She has that sound in her name and I always get it wrong. And I have not idea if my uncle got a ticket as I was too self-absorbed at 17 to consider asking him.